RMJ Movie Reviews, back again with another happy Halloween horror movie review. Alright, y'all, we wrapping this up. Hey, got my shake here, hitting the gym, you know what I'm saying? So, I decided to review, this is a straight up classic. This is a classic 80s from back when I was a kid. The Monster Squad from 1987, directed by Fred Dekker. Written by him, and also co-written by Mr. Shane Black himself. Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and The Nice Guys. Wow, The Monster Squad. Let me get right into this. Straight up classic, 80s classic. I grew up with this film. Of course, like I always do, got to give y'all the background on my personal nostalgia with the film. So basically, when I was a kid, my first cousin, we're both the same age. This might have been about maybe 1988, I'm assuming, because the film was already on video and at cable at this time. So it must have been around 88. And I remember we were playing, because my dad had this Elton John pinball machine that he bought used and he put it in the basement for Christmas. It was like awesome. So we had a real live pinball machine in our basement, right? That was good. And so we were playing pinball one day. My cousin looks at me and he goes, "Monty, it's this movie I saw where like these kids are fighting Dracula and fighting the Wolfman and fighting the Mummy." I said, "Huh? I've never heard of this movie before." Just so happens magically at the moment, after we got done playing our little pinball marathon, cut on the TV on HBO and it happened to be showing the ending of Monster Squad, right? I didn't know the film was titled Monster Squad and he didn't either. He just remembered what happened in the movie. And I actually came into the movie on the scene where Rudy was stabbing the female vampire. And of course, back in those days, you can open up TV Guide. And that was at the time when sometimes HBO or Showtime or those cable channels would do 2 airings of movies like throughout the day. Or they might re-air it again the coming week, right? So they ended up airing Monster Squad again. I think it was like the coming week, right? So I looked in TV Guide and I circled it, right? Because I used to do that back in the day when I was a kid. And I caught it again. It came on again. I recorded it. I actually still have the VHS copy over here, but I watched the DVD for this. I should have watched the VHS copy, but I want to watch the widescreen. So either way, I caught it again and I loved the film. And I found out it was called The Monster Squad. And I just love the film. I love the film. It was surprising to me that I had not even heard of the film. But then again, at that time, I was like so little, unless it was like a really, really big, huge, like Pee-wee or Batman or Gremlins type of movie, Dick Tracy or whatever. Unless it had really big, huge promotion, I didn't realize the film was even out. I hadn't even heard of it, but I didn't realize that this was a box office bomb. And it left the theaters pretty quick. And I guess apparently this had like did damage to Fred Dekker's career. Shane Black, while he was promoting Iron Man 3, said he was a little bit disappointed with kind of the reception of the movie. And also little nitpicks he had about the film. But from my perspective, it's a great movie. And rewatching it again, I still think it's a great movie. This DVD here is actually the special edition with the commentary, 2 discs, behind-the-scenes documentary, all that. Great stuff here. And what I love about this movie is how, you know, this was in the time in the 80s when kids' movies were very politically or kids' movies with quotation marks were politically incorrect. You know, so this was the time when you had Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, The Goonies, Gremlins, This Picture, Never Ending Story. These movies that were Poltergeist 1 and 2. You know, this was a time when you had these films that had children in them, and they were aimed at children audiences, but really it was putting children in danger in these very horrific, intense adult situations. And that was the thing. And that's the thing what I really love about these older 80s kids movies is that they're not playing around here. These kids are in danger of being killed by the threat. they don't mess around in these movies, and that's what I really love is how this is a PG-13 movie, right? But it's really got some intense violence and brutality in it. You know what I mean? So, Monster Squad tells the story of Van Helsing was on a fight against Dracula. He wants to get this amulet destroyed so darkness can't take over the world, but they travel back in time to our present day, which is 1987, back then. And Dracula basically wants to take over the world again, so he's going to have all the creatures rise from the grave, which will be Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and it's really the creature from the Black Lagoon, but they call him Gilman because I guess Universal Pictures didn't want anything to do with this movie, so that's why everybody looks kind of different than how they look in the Universal interpretation. And apparently they brought this movie to Universal, and Universal said, screw you guys, I don't want anything to do with it. Now, man, if Universal would have did this movie, man, I guarantee this movie probably would have been a hit. But either way, that's the story. And there's this group of kids who love monsters and comic books and all that stuff, and they catch wind that Dracula and the monsters are on the loose, and they gotta stop them. Bam! That's your story. And it's great because, like I said, these monsters are not messing around. The guy who plays Dracula, I think his name is Duncan Redgar. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He did the Zorro TV show on the Family Channel, which I shamefully used to watch back in the early 90s. And he was in the movie The Banker, which is really AKA American Psycho before American Psycho. I've never seen The Banker all the way through. Richard Roundtree is in that shaft. You all tell me about it if you have. I never finished the film, but I saw the first half. But either way, he is a terrifying Dracula. I mean, this dude doesn't mess around. This dude is basically, he's a psychopath. He's a sociopath, psychopath. But he's played with slick, controlled, sociopathic, just rage and drive. He goes directly for what he wants and he does not care. And he will kill anybody and everybody. Namely, he wants to kill the kids. And his line of dialogue to Frankenstein is he wants to get Van Helsing's diary back so he can read all the stuff so the darkness can rise and he can take over the world. He wants to recruit Frankenstein. You know, Frankenstein is played by Tom Noonan of Manhunter fame. And, you know, Frankenstein really doesn't want to partake in this task, but, you know, Dracula is his evil controller or whatever. And he tells them, you know, children possess the diary, and if they do not cooperate, you will kill them. And he delivers that line. It's chilling. And when you look in his eye when he says that, this dude means business. He's not playing. And he's just badass, man. Tom Noonan, great job as Frankenstein. He really has that good mixture of just like, he's like a gentle giant, but he'll protect his friends if he have to. Jonathan Grice, who played a wolf bat or whatever in Fright Night Part 2, plays a werewolf first here. He does a really good job. You know, he's freaking out in the police station. You gotta lock me up. You gotta lock me up. Great scene, man. I mean, the Wolfman character is cool. The Mummy is the Mummy's just kind of there. He's just kind of cool. Of course, there's a good gag with him where the kid goes, hey, there's a mummy in my closet. And his dad goes, no, he's not. He opens the door and the mummy is like in the background doing all this. And the dad's like, woo, nobody's there. And closes the door. Great scene. And the creature from the Black Lagoon, a.k.a. Gilman, he's kind of a little bit, really the only two who really only, Gilman and the Mummy really don't do much. Gilman just kind of goes raw and screams and all that. But he's kind of badass at the end of the movie. He does some badass stuff at the end. Crushes the police officer's head. I mean, this stuff is awesome, man. Kids curse. They say the S word. They use, this was the 80s. So, there was a lot of gay slurs back then. Namely, the word faggot. Which, at that time, a lot of us used to use, and we used to say stuff like homo and all of that. Kids talk like that back in the 80s. And I remember distinctly, we did used to talk like that back in school. It didn't have the same meaning that it has now. It was more just something you would say to insult people. But this movie very much has that juvenile spirit. That's the way kids talk, And they got the overweight kid in the group. They call him Fat Kid. You could not get away with that now. But that's very genuine to the times, And like the actor who played Chunk in the Goonies said, you know, if there was a fat kid in a movie in the 80s, he'd have like plaid pants and button-up shirts. And the same thing applies to this actor here, which I believe the gentleman passed away in real life who played Fat Kid in this movie. Sadly, unfortunately. I think he had pneumonia, I think. But, you know, a lot of politically incorrect stuff. The kids wield shotguns. I mean, kids are wielding guns. They're stabbing women with stakes through the heart. It's nuts. There's a lot of heavy stuff in this film. Stephen Metch, I think Metch is how you say his name. He was in Graveyard Shift. He played the guy in Graveyard Shift. You don't want to come on down in the graveyard. He played the evil boss in Graveyard Shift who ended up killing his girlfriend or whatever, stabbing her. He's great as the leader of the Monster Squad, Sean's dad. I love his personality. He's just very like a no BS, cut to the chase kind of guy. And his partner is played by, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's the stuttering guy from Harlem Nights, the stuttering boxer who goes, "We're gonna kick." It's played by that actor. And see, Shane Black co-wrote the script. So you get a little bit of that Riggs and Murtaugh vibe going there. And they're back and forth. Their scenes are very short, but there's that Lethal Weapon Last Boy Scout spirit, man, where they're just, I love when he just goes like, "I consider this exciting lead. Do you consider this exciting?" And then he goes back, he goes, "Oh, I consider it exciting lead. I'm thrilled." And they just go back and forth, man. I wish there could have been a movie with just them two, man. That would have been serious, man. But their scenes together, great. Their chemistry for their short screen time is great. Whatchamacallit, I think it's Robert, I could be wrong, I think it's Robert Zemeckis' wife, I think, but I could be wrong. The actress who played the psychiatrist in all the 4 of the Lethal Weapon movies, she plays the mom here. And her and Stephen Metch, they got a little problem in their marriage, a very intense scene. I mean, there's a lot of adult things in this film, and their marriage is on the rocks because he's a cop, stereotypical 80s stuff. But when them two are arguing, and actually the director said on the commentary that the scene was much longer where Sean is watching their argument, and I actually watched the deleted scene all out, and man, that deleted scene is no joke, man. Like, it was good they cut it down in the film because it kind of made it more about the parents. But the movie is supposed to be from the kid's perspective. But that scene is pretty harrowing when you watch it all on the DVD. And in my personal feeling, I think the argument was too intense and too adult for this movie. Although there's a lot of things in this movie that are too adult. But I think it's condensed enough that you can feel that their marriage is in trouble. You know, but it's a very intense adult argument. And Stephen Metch, he brings it in that scene. Them two go at it, man. It's a very intense adult argument. But great stuff. Of course, Rudy. Ryan, I can't remember his last name. But from Kids Incorporated. This is the dude from Kids. I used to shamefully watch Kids Incorporated from time to time on the Disney Channel back in the day. Yes, Kids Incorporated. I used to watch Kids Incorporated. You know, embarrassingly, I admit that. And he's great here. He's great. He's kind of supposed to be like, he's not really a geek like them, but he's like the cool dude. He's like Mickey Rourke, if Mickey Rourke was a teenager in this movie. You know, he just dresses, he's got a leather coat, he's got his BMX bike, and yes, I had a BMX bike back in the 80s. He's got his BMX bike. He smokes cigarettes. This dude is like 14 years old. It's great stuff. He takes pictures of naked girls from their secret tree house. It's awesome, man. And then you got the little cute little baby sister who wants to tag along. Because what I love in watching this movie is looking at the little girl follow the big kids around. That was how I used to follow my older brothers and sisters around. So I was older than this girl in this movie around that time. But still, it just reminds me of how I used to follow my brothers and sisters around when I was a kid. Because you want to hang with the big kids, and she's just an adorable little thing. I love the other little cute little guy who's got the little puppy dog. I don't know what kind of dog it is. That dog is adorable, man. They're all cute. They're all good kids. And it's just, everybody does a great job in this movie, man. The scary German guy, you seem to know a lot about monsters. I suppose I do. And then he closes the door, and you see the tattoos from concentration camps. A little bit of symbolism there. Of course, when I saw this film, I didn't even know what that meant. It wasn't until I saw the film older, I'm like, oh my God, he was in a concentration camp. digressing, I used to actually work in a nursing home where a lot of my residents were people who were in concentration camps, and I used to see the markings on their arm for real. Heavy stuff when you see it in real life. Back to Monster Squad. It's a great flick, man. You've just it's just got classic, and I think that perfect balance of the adults are playing the material seriously. The kids are being kids, but they're playing it real. The terror is real. The danger is real. And then you add in the cheesy 80s montage. Rockin' till you drop. You gotta have the 80s montage. You gotta have it. Great stuff. Great stuff. And I think my favorite part of that montage is the little dog licking the letter that that the little boy wrote to the army to help with the monsters. Oh, and Rudy, who's my dog, how he's making his bow and arrow, he's making the silver bullets, and they getting ready for combat, man. I love this movie, man, and it's just so many great scenes in this movie. I just keep, and the practical creature effects, CGI is great. And to me, the only time CGI was truly magical was when we had The Abyss, Terminator 2, and Jurassic Park. Way back in the early 90s. I think CGI was magical at that time. But I said this in another video long ago. The second Sharknado and all those other movies, once everybody started doing it, it's just not magical anymore. But practical effects. Stan Winston did the work, and another guy, Richard Edlund, I think is his name. I didn't realize I've been watching all the movies that I mentioned before, the Gremlins and the Poltergeist and the Goonies and all that stuff. A lot of these cats are the same guys who worked on all these pictures. So that's why you see the vomit creature from Poltergeist 2, all the creatures in this film, Gremlins, some of the stuff in the early Friday. I didn't realize Stan Winston did some work on Friday the 13th Part 3. The House movies, the practical puppets, and that's the thing. It's fake, but a puppet is. I could take the vomit creature from Poltergeist to put him right here. He'll be right next to me, right? But he's here. CGI. Hey, nothing's there. There's nothing here, right? No effect. But here, you see the Wolfman. His slime is coming out of his jaws. It's an electronic mask, but it's there. Frankenstein is there. Fake makeup, but he's there. The mummy is there. All of it, the little flying bat, which looks a little cheesy, but that adds to the charm, is flying on a wire in front of the actors. You can feel it. You know what I mean? And I think that's something about these older films, particularly from the 80s, and listening to the commentaries for these movies. This stuff was very hard to film, and they put a lot of hard work into it. And I'll personally probably be devastated if I worked as hard as it is to get these effects. I mean, the guy who played Gilman was saying that he couldn't even take a piss in that suit. Can you imagine getting in that big old thing? And he said he had to hop in the water, get out. He said he couldn't eat. I mean, oh man. But it just shows practical effects in front of the camera is timeless. Because aside from the way some of the kids talk and those of us who remember, who are old enough to remember, when you look at some of the kids' outfits in the movie and the BMX bikes, we remember how some of us used to dress back then, and the cheesy montage. Those are the only things that really dated. But if you really kind of took those things out of it, Monster Squad, you wouldn't even notice. You would not even notice that this is a film from 1987 if you took out those little things that I just mentioned. And of course, we gotta talk about. I pretty much hit all the points of the movie that I love about it. The writing is the spot on. It's a simple story. It's a short film. It's only an hour and 15 minutes. Very adult oriented. The violence is pretty hard, and I'm gonna talk about the famous scene. Debatable. This scene is debatable to me now because I'm a grown man, but the scene where Dracula calls the little girl a bitch. It's questionable if they really had to go there. According to the commentary, they did not tell the little girl. Now here's my thing. I don't know if it was filmed in such a way that he actually called her a bitch to her face, or whether it was like a doll and he said bitch or whatever, and he scared her from the other angle. I don't know, but at least I know the part with the teeth and him hissing at her, that was filmed on the set, and they did not tell the little girl, and her reaction with her screaming is genuine. When I watch that now, seeing her scream like that, there is a part of me that kind of feels like, man, that's kind of wrong. It's kind of wrong. I mean, I will give him points for just having the balls and the audacity to push it that far, but this was the 80s, so I'm pretty sure a lot of people working on that movie were doing cocaine anyway, so they probably thought it was a great idea to do that. Just like, doing lines like, hey, let's call the 5-year-old a bitch. Sounds good, huh? I don't know, questionable scene, but I will say it holds its place in 80s cinema because you will not, and you never, ever, ever see that done now. Unless you get some maverick filmmaker who just has the balls to do it. You wouldn't see that now. You just wouldn't. But it's awesome, man. They play with the monster lore. The monster lore is pretty much typical. Although Mummy and Gil, man, don't really have any way. They just kill them pretty easy. But at least Wolfman, Dracula, they're killed pretty much how they're traditionally killed. This is a great movie, man. I just absolutely love Monster Squad. To me, this is the perfect film, man. This is a 10 out of 10, man. I have to give this a higher rating. This is going through the scales. Is this better than Goonies? Unfortunately, I got to give it to Goonies on this one. It's a close match. It's close because it's a close match, but Goonies, Goonies kind of inches out a little bit. But they're both perfect, but I think Goonies wins that one. I don't have nothing else to say about this movie. I absolutely love the Monster Squad. I think it's the perfect Halloween horror movie review. It's just got everything you need, man. I'm done. It's great. Anybody who's never seen it, go check it out. Bear in mind, it was made in 1987, so it's a little bit dated in here and there, but I think the rawness of the violence, the edge, and that's the thing, this movie has a very tough edge to it for a kid's picture, and the practical monster effects, I think, just gives it extra points, man. Thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video, and leave comments down below about Monster Squad. Let's just talk Monster Squad. They were talking about they wanted to remake it, but they can get the finger, man. Don't touch this movie. RMJ Movie Reviews. I'll see you guys soon.